Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you are new. For those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Loz. I am a natural competitive bodybuilder and I'm also an online coach specialising in coaching both competitive and non-competitive bodybuilders. And in today's video, we're going to go through how much it actually costs to compete. We're essentially going to do a little bit of a financial audit on your potential or your current bodybuilding prep. So if you are somebody who is considering competing, you're maybe a little bit concerned about how much the actual prep in itself is going to cost, or even if you're someone who is considering competing and you've not thought about how much it's going to cost, then you definitely need to watch this video today, because ultimately having a bodybuilding goal and having the goal of getting on stage is such an exciting goal, but it is a costly goal. There are financial costs that come along with that, and I think that often people don't take that into consideration when they're looking at the timing of their prep, when they're looking at the length of their prep, they're looking at how many shows they want to do. They kind of put the finances as a little bit of an afterthought, but it is something that you ultimately need to consider. You need to make sure that it is something that is legitimately feasible for you. Do you have awareness of it so that you can hopefully just enjoy executing the prep in itself without, the finances being something that maybe just adds more stress onto that process that you definitely do not want. So we are going to break down everything that there is to pay for throughout your prep. And then we're also going to go through at the end and a little bit throughout everything that you can do to actually save money and in some ways like cut corners with things that you probably don't need to be paying for, and how you can make prep as cost efficient as possible. So we're literally going to dive straight into the competing budgets. This will be on the screen for you guys now, and this is something that I've made up on a basic template so that you guys can actually use this throughout your own prep. It might even be throughout your off season, might even be throughout different photo shoot preps, whatever it is. You can apply this and then you can use that to take into consideration your own financial costs and what you need to pay for. So in the description below, you will now have a link to access this document. You can literally access the doc, make a copy, make it your own, and you can then personalize it based on everything that you need throughout your own process. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to go through a little bit of a general example and kind of taking into consideration the costs of my prep for last year with a lot of things that I paid for, to really show you what the true cost is and what those totals look like at the back end of it. We're going to start by looking at the top. We obviously have, just in general, your fixed bodybuilding costs. Now, these are things that ultimately, whether you're competing or not, you're going to be paying for anyway. Kind of like your non-negotiable fixed bodybuilding costs. You might have some additional things that you need to put in here. You can amend those as needed. But this is just an example of my current costs. Obviously, everything that I'm going to go through in this video as well is talking about the natural side of the sport. If you are obviously on the assisted side of the sport, there are a lot more additional costs that do come into that. That is really a whole separate video in itself. It's not my area of expertise, but you have to take into consideration the additional costs of supplementation, health monitoring, anything else that you need to do on that front. But when we're looking at general fixed costs for most athletes, you're looking at, really, in my opinion, these four things. This is really what you need at a basic level. You've got your costs of coaching, so it's very, very likely that you're going to have a coach. I generally will recommend that you do have a coach. Some people can obviously coach themselves, especially through like the earlier stages or maybe in just general gaining phases, diet phases. There's a lot of information that you can learn online, especially from sites like MBW through the educational courses. But especially when it comes to a prep for probably 99% of bodybuilders, and especially all first timers, you're going to need a coach. And you're probably going to be paying for a coach, and you should really be having a coach even throughout your off season as well if you're looking to maximize your progress. Coaching costs can vary from the coach that you're working with, but usually you're going to be probably somewhere between 150 to 250 pounds. Some coaches potentially with those higher levels of expertise or results maybe might be even a little bit higher at that like 300 to 350 range. I've kind of estimated in here like 200 pounds. I am fortunate that I do not pay for my coach because AJ coaches me. For those of you who don't know, AJ Morris, who is, in my opinion, one of the best natural bodybuilding coaches in the world. He is also my partner, so he coaches me and he doesn't make me pay him for coaching. So I don't have to pay for that personally, but you're probably going to have to pay for your coach on a monthly basis. You then have your gym membership, so you're going to need somewhere to train. I would always recommend at least these first two things is don't skimp out on these two things, especially not the coach. But your coach and where you train, like that's going to play a huge role in the results that you get and your enjoyment of the process. So there's a lot of areas where you can obviously save money, but like for me personally, and I did this when I was bodybuilding as a student, especially throughout my first prep, the two things that mattered most were training in a good environment and having a coach who could guide me to be my absolute best. So I never skimped on those things. A good gym membership, don't underestimate the importance of that. You can make amazing progress wherever it is, but having a good environment, having good kit can definitely really help you, especially throughout prep. Having access to more than maybe just, free weights is going to be potentially more helpful to you maintaining performance and maintaining muscle mass throughout that prep. Gym membership, probably going to be £40 to £50 nowadays for a decent gym membership. Food costs monthly, I've estimated here around £200. That's honestly about what I spend on a monthly basis on food. When I've been on more of like a student budget again, that's been a little bit on the lower end, and I'll talk through that at the end of the video and also in future videos as well. Necessary supplements, if you're talking about the necessary sups you need, you're going to need creatine, and that's about it, if you are on a budget. But other things that you're probably going to need in your diet are going to be like whey protein, you're probably going to need EAAs, you might need cyclic dextrin in your intra, and that's about it. And that's me obviously estimating these things and extrapolating those out across the entirety of the preps. You can see here I put a number of months in prep. My prep last year was 9 months in total. So I've just extrapolated that, times that by the amount. You can literally put the amount of, months or whatever you're spending in prep here, and it will amend that for you. So those are your fixed costs, right? This is literally without competing. Without competing, those are the costs. Please don't forget that, like, especially when it comes to the food, like, you're going to be paying for that anyway. I'd hope you'd be paying for a gym membership anyway to, take care of yourself. So some of these costs, when we talk about bodybuilding costs, like, you're going to be paying for food to take care of yourself regardless. We then come down and we have the additional prep expenses. So these are things that you may need to pay for throughout prep, aside from the actual show in and of itself. And there's not really much that goes into this, if I'm being honest, because the reality is when you are in prep, you are just continuing to bodybuild, hopefully exactly as you've been doing in the off season. In some ways, in my opinion, you save money because you're actually paying for less food. You're actually probably not eating out as much, things that you'd probably spend more money on in some regards. But there's going to be like a few things that you might need to pay more for, especially if you are, competing. So what I've done for this section, and the same thing goes for the section below, is I have written in a tab that says optional, and there's a drop box down here so you can basically decide whether it's optional or not. I've written in my opinion on here, and this is so that when you're looking at these costs, if you're doing this yourself, you can start to weigh up what you really need and what you don't need, especially when you come down to the total at the bottom, and you can see where you can maybe try and save a little bit money if necessary. But in my opinion, these are really the main sort of additional prep expenses. So you have, first and foremost, maybe a posing suit or a bikini. This I'm obviously relating to most females. You might need, if you're obviously deciding to compete, to have that posing suit or bikini that mimics how your physique will look on stage in an actual stage suit or bikini. Is it necessary? In my opinion, no. If you don't want to spend what's now, to be honest, £75 to £100 on a posing suit, you can just wear a standard triangle bikini that you bought off of, ASOS or Amazon. And if you need that for the bikini division, for example, you can just wear it as it is. Or if you even need it for, figure, physique, bodybuilding, you can literally tie that into a crossback suit and it will do the job. You are probably, however, going to need heels. If you are competing in a class like bodybuilding, some federations physique, you don't need to wear heels. that's definitely a delight. However, most of us are going to need to get some heels, so that's an expense as well. There are different options that you can go through here, and I'm going to run you through at the end loads of different options with all of these things where you can actually save money and look for alternatives. But if you're looking at buying like a new pair of heels, you're talking 75 to 100 pounds. Posing coaches. So posing is quite expensive. It's something that I think people debate a little bit in the industry is, do you need a posing coach? Do you need to have regular posing lessons? Do you need to have posing check-ins? I really think it depends. I really think it depends on where you're at and what you need. Now, for me personally, in my first prep, I did not have a single posing lesson. Now, a lot of what I learned in that prep, I learned myself through watching videos, and I also had friends just help me in the gym. Other competitors, obviously I was very fortunate to have like my closest friend, Meg Sylvester, who was already an IFBB pro. She helped me a lot with my posing, and she was really, up until this past year, the only person who'd ever helped me with my posing. Your coach can probably also help you a little bit. And I really do think that once you've learned a lot of the basics of what you need to do, a big part of posing is just practicing. However, that's not to say that posing coaches aren't extremely helpful. So if you can get a posing coach, will it help you? Absolutely. If you can't afford a posing coach, is it going to be the end of the world? No. Are there ways that you can work around it? Yes. But if you have the financial luxury of being able to get a posing coach, you might be in a position where maybe you're getting a posing lesson maybe once a month throughout that prep, maybe once every couple of weeks as you get closer to the show. You might go to workshops. You might sign up for community memberships, like for example on the Limitless Flow posing site, which a lot of my clients are a part of. You gain access to a bunch of different videos and tutorials that basically will give you the basics that you need to pose. And you might utilize those to your own discretion throughout prep. But I've estimated here, say, £50 per lesson, again, depends on the coach, and maybe 10 lessons across a prep. And maybe that's including, off season, and then going into the prep, you're talking like maybe £500 just on posing alone. And then really the only other additional thing that might come into play with you being in prep and looking to compete is just maybe some prep supplements. And I'm not talking about assistance here. Obviously, from a natural side of things, you might have other additional things that you need to pay for if you need them. And these are, again, as I've written in here, in my opinion, optional. So you're looking at like sleep supplements, digestive supplements, tools that help you with your cardio, pre-workouts, things that help you with your stress. You might be implementing things like ashwagandha or glycine. There's a lot of different things that you could potentially pay for here. Do they help? Yes. Are they necessary? Again, no. So you've got to consider the frequency of those things. Say, for example, if you are spending £100 on additional supplements across a month, 9 months in a prep, potentially £900, maybe closer to £1,000 across that prep. I, again, am fortunate that I get a lot of my supplements sponsored by Insight Subs. There are ways that you can work around this, which I'll come on to with the money saving strategy. So we've got the additional prep expenses here. We're looking at maybe £1,500 there. So we're already starting to rack things up a little bit. And this is all before we've even got to the actual expense of the show, of the competition itself. And this is where you will now start to really rack up the costs. There's a lot of things here that people, I think, don't think about and don't realise when it comes to one, just deciding to compete in itself, but especially with the amount of shows that they decide to do. I see this a lot with a lot of first timers, especially with like, I'm going to do 5-6 shows, which physically in itself is already a challenge. But the biggest thing is, honestly, it's really expensive. It can be really, really expensive. And you need to be able to consider this. Like, competing is, in my opinion, it's a luxury, it's a privilege, and the financial part obviously comes into that. We're going to break down everything with the expenses of one show. So that's what I've listed out here, is like the expense of one show. You might find the expenses change from show to show, and you can obviously copy this and you can amend it as needed. But this is an example of basically everything that like I would have paid for in my shows. Just giving you a little bit of a roundup of that. So first and foremost, you have your federation membership. Regardless of who you're competing with, you usually have to pay for membership with that federation. So, for example, if you were to compete with UKDFBA, you would pay for your federation membership, which I believe is about £40 to £50, and then you would also pay for your classes on top of that. Different federations will cost different amounts of money. Some federations are a lot more expensive than others. And again, we'll go through that with considerations. So you have to firstly pay for your federation membership. You then need to pay for your class. And this is, again, where some people go, oh, I want to do this class and this class and this class. It's like, right, okay, well, you're going to have to pay for every single class. And usually classes can be, again, between maybe like 40 to 50 pounds. So in here, I've written 50 pounds. Actually, in my first show that I did last year, I did do 2 classes, so I had to pay for 2 of those. These are not optional things. You have to pay for this. Your tan, you have to pay for your tan. You might decide to do your tan yourself, which potentially is going to be a little bit cheaper. Generally, if I'm honest, I'd always recommend getting your tan done professionally if it's an optional option that is available. I had to do my own tan for the BNBF because they do not have professional tanners there. But even still, like, that cost me a lot of money to buy everything I needed. I had to get the Pro Tan base coat, the Pro Tan top coat, deep Pro Tan like extra deep or whatever it was called. I had to get the show shine. I had to get all of the exfoliating stuff. Like, it was still very expensive. So regardless, for tan, you're probably going to be paying at least £100. And most packages, even professional packages at shows, are going to be about £100 for the best package that you get there. We then have the bikini and suit costs. And unfortunately, as a female, this is where it does rack up quite a lot, because bikinis and suits that you have to wear on stage, and ultimately you do need to wear a suit on stage or a bikini on stage. It's just the way that it is. They're pretty expensive, you know. You have different options here. A new suit nowadays can be anywhere from £400 to £500. You can get second-hand suits, which can be, depending, £250 to maybe £300. And you also have options of renting suits from different suit makers, and that can still be £100 to £125. I was very fortunate that I was actually sponsored by Time to Shine in my last season, so I did not have to pay for my suits. If I did, I would have had one suit for the entire season, and I probably might have even got it secondhand as well. If not, I would have maybe even rented a suit, because they are very, very expensive. I think a lot of competitors go in and they see other competitors who maybe have like different suit for every show. Like, seriously, if you're getting a different suit for like 3 shows, you're talking £1,500 just for suits alone. Which, if you've got the finances to do that, awesome. And if you want to do it, amazing. But I'm telling you now, you're going to be wearing that suit or that bikini for 10, 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes max. And if you're doing one show, that's it. So in my first season, I think I paid about £400 for that bikini, which, by the way, I'm selling. So if anyone actually wants it, please let me know. But I paid for that bikini and I wore it for 10 minutes. That was it. And I never, ever, ever wore it again. So just consider that when you're thinking about how many bikinis or suits you want to get and what it looks like. But obviously, if you do buy a suit, you might wear that for multiple seasons. And that's what I would really recommend, was like, if I'd have bought a suit this season, I would have picked one that I really liked, one that I could wear for several seasons in a row. So the next one that kind of falls similarly in line with this is then also hair and makeup. So as a female, again, on stage, as part of your presentation, need to do something with your hair and makeup. Some judges might say, oh, we don't care about how you look, we're not looking at your face, we're not looking at your hair. No, they're not judging your face, they're not judging your hair, they're not judging your suit, but in line with your physique, they are looking at your overall package. In categories like bikini, figure, it's even more so the case. I think it does make a difference whether you get on stage and you look presentable or you don't. And judges, whether they kind of notice it or not, they are going to have some draw into your presentation and your aura on stage. So having, a suit that fits well, having the colour that's right, having your hair well done to suit your physique, having your makeup be at least done to a level where, like, it's not throwing off your tan or you don't look weird under the stage lights, is important. Most people do tend to go professionally for this. It's going to be potentially around £100. You can do your hair and makeup yourself, which is what I did, but you're still going to have to pay for the makeup you need. You may be still going to have to pay for like hair stuff if you need to, and there's going to be a cost associated with that. So I've estimated that at around £100. Other parts that really go into the actual look For a female, you're talking jewellery, because usually you have to wear jewellery in most categories. You can get some jewellery at a decent price. You're going to maybe pay £20 for some earrings, some bracelets, maybe a ring, and that will absolutely do the job. In terms of the actual show in itself, you've got travel costs. So you're probably going to have to travel to that show, whether you're driving, whether you're getting the train, whether you're getting the bus. There's going to be some travel that is influenced in that. I've put in here £50. Honestly, it was probably more than that. But if I think about the amount I had to put in my car to travel to a show, pay for parking, all of that stuff, maybe I'm talking £50 for each show. You then also have to think about accommodation. And this is where, even when you think about the shows that you do, you take these things into consideration, because if you're staying local, like I did one show that I drove to on the day, great, I didn't have to pay to stay over anywhere. However, I also did other shows, like when I did PCA in Birmingham, I stayed in a stay city. It was also for some reason like really expensive in Birmingham, I think, that weekend. So I paid definitely like 200 quid just for my accommodation, just for somewhere to stay. Other things you maybe then need to consider from the show, you have professional photography for every class. So if you're doing multiple classes, you're going to have to pay for multiple packages. First show, for example, I did several classes, £40 I think it was per class. That's £80 just on photography. Videography, some shows might offer you videography in terms of a videography package. If you want that, obviously you're going to have to pay for it. I actually paid for videography at a couple of my shows just for obviously my own preference. And usually a videographer, you're talking £400 to £500 for a show day video. I've also written in here pump-up bands and dumbbells. People always forget these. Please do not forget these, because you'll probably need them at every show. It's very rare that shows will actually provide these for you. You can just get some cheap off Amazon, but it's still something to factor in, £15. Now, that's pretty much everything run through there in terms of the expenses for a single show. The expenses for a single show come out here at £970. Okay, and that's me honestly being moderate. I would say that every show that I went to this last year, I probably paid about £1,000 in total for the entire weekend for everything I had to pay for, because I'm not also taking into consideration anything else that I needed to pay for whilst I was actually there, like little things I needed to get, say getting water on the day, getting a coffee, paying for additional parking, things like that. You then, as I say, have to take into consideration the number of shows. So I did 4 shows. So you're looking at £970 maybe per show. 4 of those shows, you're looking at additional prep costs throughout, £1,500, and your standard costs throughout, £4,400. So we're looking at a total here of total show costs of £3,880 potentially, and a cost summary of the entire prep being £9,840. So that is almost £10,000 for an entire prep doing 4 shows. And a lot of people do not take that into consideration at all. There are also a lot of other unaccounted for costs. I know these things might seem silly, but in prep, you might, for example, develop a habit of wanting to go out and get a coffee on your rest days, a bit of a treat. I know I did that. Most rest days I was going out and getting a coffee. £5 for a coffee on most rest days. That really adds up. Have maybe buying new clothes. You might literally need to buy new clothes if your clothes do not fit. Other people also get in crazy spending habits throughout prep, and they end up buying a lot more things that they don't potentially need. You also see a lot of other people, and this is where the glamour of the sport kind of comes away a bit. They'll pay and do photo shoots and all these different things. Like, you're talking a photo shoot, you're going to have to pay another £400, £500. Like, it really, really does add up. This is just a rundown of how much a prep could and might cost you. It's not how much it has to cost you. And the reason why I've given you guys access to this sheet as well is hopefully so that you can kind of audit and amend this based on where you can actually save and cut costs. So especially through a lot of these things that I've obviously noted as optional or not optional, you can actually remove it, and you'll see that you can save a lot more money if you start to pull a lot of these things out. And there are a lot of things that you can do throughout this that are going to save you money. So we're going to go through a couple of those things now. So coming back to the very start with those necessities, as I said, do not skimp out on the things that are important. It is completely nonsensical for you to skimp out on a cheap coach or training at a gym that you hate training at and having crap sessions throughout prep, but then spending £500 on a brand new bikini. Like, you need to really think about what your priorities are throughout that prep and throughout your bodybuilding journey and what's actually important. Say, especially with the coach, do not neglect paying for a good coach, because if you invest in a good coach, that will genuinely have such a positive effect on not only the prep itself, but with what you get on the return of investment on that within your entire bodybuilding process. If you need to, you can pay for a cheaper gym. You can, I believe, get memberships at places like Pure Gym for like $9.99 a month if you need to. So that is definitely an option. Food-wise, you can save a lot of money. I know when I was at uni and I was a student, I used to shop at places like Aldi, and I would literally spend £20 to £30 per week at most on a food shop, sometimes even less. And I would never eat out. I would never go and buy coffees. I would never do stuff like that because I just couldn't afford it. So there are definitely ways that you can 100% save a lot of money on that front. And I actually remember saving a lot more money than my other friends at uni because I wasn't spending money drinking, I wasn't spending money going out, eating, doing all of these things. Even though I was paying for a prep, I saved money in a lot of other areas. Necessary supplements, obviously you can save a lot of money on supplements. You can buy supplements cheaper from different websites. You can get them off Amazon. You can use athlete affiliate codes. You don't have to have whey protein. You don't have to have certain sleep supplements within your stack on a daily basis. Yes, these things are helpful, but they're not absolutely necessary. So it's not the end of the world if you can't have them in your setup. As for these additional costs, as I said, with a posing coach, not something that you absolutely necessarily need. If you really cannot afford it, watching tutorials online, maybe following memberships, yes, maybe take that into consideration if you're wanting to bring your absolute best to the stage, but there are ways that you can save money there. You don't, as I mentioned, need a posing suit or a posing bikini. Heels you can also buy really quite cheap off of different sites. Don't be afraid of doing like a bit of research. I know even my heels that I bought, I looked on, your standard bodybuilding site and they were like £120. I found them on just some random website and I think I got them for like 50 quid. So I saved myself like £60 getting my heels for stage. And then when it comes to the actual show day, there is a lot of things that you can save a lot more money on here. When it comes to the federation and the class registration, as I said, do pick your shows wisely. Some federations, the costs can really add up. And that's not just with the amount you have to pay for registration, the amount you have to pay per class, but they might also have necessary tie-ins with, for example, having a membership card to their wider organisation, or paying for their specific tan and not being able to use other tans at their shows. Having to maybe stay in certain accommodation near to where the venue is because there actually isn't anywhere else to stay nearby. So these are things that you need to kind of do your research on and see what's going to be more feasible, because you can go from one show and spending like 80 to 90 quid on an entry for everything. That's what I spent for most of my shows last year. But when I competed in 2020, the federation I competed with then, which was Two Bros in the UK, so that's like the MPK, I ended up paying like £300 to enter that show and to do 2 classes. So it was a lot more expensive in comparison, and that's what you have to also add up with where you actually want to compete and how expensive that's going to be. You also then obviously don't need to pay for additionals like the videography, the stage photos, all of those things that are really just a little bit of a luxury, but especially with the things that you do potentially need. So when you're looking at the suit, when you're looking at makeup, looking at hair, do find the ways that you can, again, make these more efficient for yourself. Like, as I say, I did do all of my hair and makeup for all of my last shows. I saved so much money and also so much time and so much stress on those show days by doing that. You do not have to buy expensive makeup either. You can get everything you need for probably 20 to 30 pounds. I tried to also buy things that I would reuse as well, rather than just getting things that I'd wear for the show, and that really, really helped. Bikini suit as well, as mentioned. Don't be afraid to even like reach out to people and ask them if you can rent their old suits or things like that, because there are things that you can definitely do there to save yourself a lot of money. So all in all, can we conclude that a bodybuilding prep can be pretty expensive? Yes, it can. I think for most competitors, you're probably going to be spending anywhere from £5,000 to £10,000 on everything that you need to across that prep. But does it have to be expensive? No, there are ways that you can make that a lot more cost efficient for yourself and save a lot of, honestly, just unnecessary costs by simply just being a little bit smarter about it. Start personalizing your bodybuilding prep budget, and you can start to see where you can actually make that more suitable and more efficient for yourself. I do hope that this has been a helpful video for some of you. If you have any questions or anything else that you want more insight on, please do shoot them in the comments down below. If you have found this video helpful, please do make sure to like, subscribe, maybe share with a friend if you think that it's going to be helpful for them as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you all in the next one.